I'm Sidharth Joshi. You can call me Sid. And I thank you, Ankita and Zach, for the opportunity today to share a little bit of my experience with digital transformation and how it is impacting people's life and how they can actually try to make most of this in from their career perspective, right? Because everything we know and everything we have been using has been changing very dramatically today. So I'm going to share a little bit of stories per se. So would like anybody have a view or they think it's something which they agree, don't agree, or they can't say? We'll welcome all kind of feedback. So request Zach and Ankita to help me track the chat because I'm sharing my screen. So if there is any question, feel free to stop me and I'll be more than happy to share any insights I may have. So just yeah, this is I wanted to put this picture out there. So if you can look at me now, this is me, and this is also me a little while before. This is actually a month before my mother actually passed away in July. So this is how I used to look, and I just realized. So there is typically I would do a poll in terms of which looks better, but now I just realized a little bit of transformation on my personal end. So I stopped dyeing my hair, and as a part of the ritual, I got rid of all the other facial hair as well. So different views, both. So any preference if you have, let me know. That is purely for our research perspective, for whatever it is. But a little bit about myself, and again, thank you for your time and attention today because you're making a significant investment of your couple of hours of your life in this. And at my age, you realize that time is very precious. So we want to use it judiciously. I didn't have that insight probably 15 years ago. I've been doing a lot of different things differently. But I did have a very interesting journey so far. So I've been 22 years in the industry now, doing different roles, different functions, and in different geographies. So one of the mantras I always followed is I didn't worry about where the job took me. If it was an exciting opportunity, I always took it. So I worked in US, UK, except actually all continents except for Alaska and Africa from that perspective. So I had experiences in different countries, different times, and this is actually my second stint now in Singapore. I was working here in 2003, 2004 for a year. And this time around, I've been here for 10 years. So I was here from 2013. Before that, I've done multiple stints in the US and UK as well. And born and brought up in India. So did a little bit of, didn't really work there, but had some internships and work experience there as well. And I've done different kinds of roles. Currently, I lead a team covering Asia, Pacific, and Japan of system engineers who help our customers and partners design solutions to solve their business problems and to accelerate their digital transformation. So almost on a daily basis, we come across customers trying to gain business advantage today. And we, in a very short period of time, actually, the pandemic has accelerated it 10x. If I be very conservative also, it is probably more than that, but it has accelerated it more than 10x the pace of transformation. So what was optional or people were kind of dabbling in it, we found during the pandemic that it kind of became necessity. People had to transform their business. Many businesses ran only online, and people could not survive. People could not travel to their traditional work location. Their traditional distribution channels actually got reduced or restricted. And then many of them had to accelerate transformation. So we saw a huge surge in the GTM for people to actually do this. So I also took time during the pandemic to actually do a little bit of learning. So I did a certification around CISO because I was interacting with a lot of risk management folks in the business and the enterprise. So I actually became a certified CISO, and tried to understand a little bit about cloud security as well during this time. And pandemic also impacted me significantly, and my wife more than me, because before pandemic, I was typically traveling 3 weeks out of 4 in a month. And only my laundry used to happen on weekends at home. So when I was stuck at home for 2 years, my wife, after a quarter, we have been married for more than 20 years, actually. So the vanity wore off very, very quickly. After a quarter, she was not really very pleased that I was around for another 1.5 years or more. So I love traveling. I love interacting with people. My goal is to actually visit 100 countries, and I've done about 40 actually. Yeah, so far. Yeah, so the good thing is I'm vegetarian by birth. So I can tell you where you can find vegetarian food everywhere. So 20 years ago, when I started first time, it was really, really challenging. But now I can tell you where you can get good food, vegetarian food in countries where it is really difficult, like Mongolia. You can't really find vegetarian food there, where the summer temperature is 0 degree or 2 degrees. So they eat everything from horse meat to everything exotic, actually. So a lot of fun experiences. I love traveling. I love meeting people, learning about different culture, and it's a very exciting role. So that's why I love doing what I do. And that's one thing. If you really want to take away from this, is that you should find what moderately interests you, actually, or moderately you love. We always may not be always be able to get the dream job, and we all have a pressure in terms of getting employed and getting meaningfully engaged as well, and compensated for that as well. But you should find something adjacent or close to what you like doing, because trying to do that for 20-25 years is very, very difficult. And I thought I loved system admin when I started off. I liked doing system auditing when I started off. I really, after 10 years into the job, realized that I really enjoyed doing solving customer problems and designing right solutions for them, which is what I do, or we do as custom engineers or pre-sales today, when we design enterprise solutions, bespoke solutions for enterprise customers. And I took to it like fish to water, and I had a lot of reservations doing that, because there is a variable component to our compensation. So if we don't meet our targets, we don't get paid fully. And you normally, being in a very steady job, being in a very defined role before this, I was very averse to the idea of having a variable component to your pay, because you're not really sure you'll get 100% of what you think you owe. So that's where it made me very jittery. But when I did take the plunge and get into pre-sales, I realized that it is the best thing what you can do. You can actually influence the customer choice and try to solve their business problem with the statement they have and the objectives they have. So that was very interesting. And for fun time, very, very important, again, to find time for yourself and have a leisure time, have some kind of thing which kind of helps you unwind. Because we are at the start of the career, and at least I was guilty of that. And I think the generation now are very, very smart, so they understand this much better than what we did. You need to find yourself. You need to find out what helps you unwind, what helps you do this. And it's very interesting, because I can watch sports. If I'm in the US, I can watch baseball, basketball, even American football. If I'm in Singapore, I enjoy watching the English Premier League and the other soccer leagues which are there, or I can do field hockey. And you need to find what helps you unwind. So that is very, very important. And the last part, if you can see on the slide on the chart, I slashed out, is the area of improvement, or the thing which I'm trying to do. So I've observed, and it goes back to self-reflection and awareness. I found that during pandemic, I picked up and I was spending more than, and there are tools now which your devices and all your smartphones and all your devices actually can tell you about this. So I found myself spending an inordinately large amount of time on the social media platforms, and I actually managed to do. I'm still not there as where I want to be, but I managed to reduce some of the screen time what I do. So I'm not on most of the social media. I do professionally because we are required to engage. So I stay on LinkedIn, and my preferred social media platform is actually Twitter. This is because of the brevity it provides, actually. So I loved it when it was actually having a 140 character limit. Now it's kind of getting bigger, and now they allow people to make large posts because you can upload a 10-page post with a picture as a picture. So kind of the ways people get around it, but that's what I did. And I'm trying to reduce something. So it's one of those things you kind of pick up. But this is just a little bit of a background in terms of what kind of stories you can expect over the hour or whatever we have. So if you really don't want to spend the hour and a half with us anymore, I would suggest you to watch this video, and hopefully we can get it. Murphy's Law won't kick in and this video will play well. Sorry, we haven't had the chance to test this before, but if it fails, I apologize in advance. My God. Okay.
Once upon a time, business as usual was often good enough. No more. Where we are going, good enough is dead. In a world where everything is connected, where everything is equally excellent, where performance is reaching perfection, there's only one space left to innovate in: you. Right now, you are a central point in the raging tornado of change fueled by digitization, mobilization, augmentation, disintermediation, automation. Well, the list goes on. Science fiction is becoming science fact. Think about self-driving cars or computers that can learn and think. The way we work will never be the same. The skills we need will be dramatically different. Winning or losing are now happening faster than ever before. So what's your response? How will you discover new opportunities in one of the most transformational times in human history? Are you driving change, or are you being driven by it? Disruption has become the new normal. With change, it's always gradually, then suddenly, well, things really have stopped happening gradually. This change is exponential. Everything that used to be dumb and disconnected is now wired and intelligent. Cars, cities, ports, farms, even our bodies will be wired with sensors and will talk to each other. These game changers are also combinatorial. They amplify each other, creating a perfect storm of change. Quantum computing fuels big data. The Internet of Things fuels artificial intelligence and deep learning, which fuels robotics. However, anything that cannot be digitized or automated will become extremely valuable. Human-only traits such as creativity, imagination, intuition, emotion, and ethics will be even more important in the future, because machines are very good at simulating, but not at being. Yes, robots and software will do some of our work, but this will allow us to focus on things that cannot be automated. To imagine change squared, you've got to start engaging more with what might be, not just with what is. Immerse yourself in the immediate future, 5 to 7 years out from today. We need to go beyond technology and data to reach human insights and wisdom. Technology represents the how of change, but humans represent the why. The future is about holistic business model. The opportunity is to be liquid, to learn just in time, not just in case, not single improvements, but complete transformations, not individual systems, but new ecosystems. Humanity is where true and lasting value is created. We will engage, relate, and buy things because of the experiences they provide, because of their transformative power. The future doesn't just happen. The future gets happened. The new way to work is to embrace technology, but not to become it. The future is in technology, yet the bigger future lies in transcending it. Let's live and lead from here. Really what's happening is that technology
Yeah, this is Sorry about that. This is the flip side of having embedding a video. So it will always come back. Yeah. Okay. So a little bit, if you only wanted to spend 4 minutes or 5 minutes to do that, but we can see, right? We've all seen this in some way, shape, or form, and we all are continue to be astonished by this. But what is interesting is how it has trended over 10 years, actually. So, interestingly, in the last 3 months, actually, the Google searches have gone down. Has it got something to do with ChatGPT? Maybe yes, maybe no, but it's a little bit enough to actually come down and make a significant reduction, actually. Noticeable reduction, I wouldn't say significant, sorry. Facebook has actually gone down from previously, and some of them have disappeared. Some of the platforms are new. So which is what, if you see, there was just this week, I read something about Instagram dying a slow death. Now, this is very interesting. I know some of you may be like, that's because you are this kind of the Instagram generation. My kids are on Instagram. I'm not on Instagram. I have a Facebook account, which I have not used in 10 years, but you can see Facebook is actually losing share or the number of hits and what they're trying to do in terms of this. So there is a generational transition with social media platforms as well and applications as well. So they also have a life cycle. We always thought something we start using and they will kind of continue to be. That's kind of worrying for super apps as well. And we'll see a couple of examples of this as well. But what is interesting now with initially was the volume and the size of what happens in a minute. Now, what I like to compare and contrast is how it actually has changed over probably last 5 years. And this kind of changes very significantly, very quickly. So you can't really do a decade comparison between this, but every couple of years, you can see new trends around this. And this part, I think, has been beaten to death, so I don't want to spend too much time on this, but what is the most valuable resource in the world today? Oil. Everybody knew about oil, right? So this analogy is on the oil, but data is the actual new oil for the industry. I think you have heard this enough. It's a cliche, which we have heard all the time now. I've been kind of parroting this for a decade now. So, but the interesting parts will come as we go along. But anybody have a different opinion, please feel free to share that in a chat and we'll try to address it, or it'll be interesting to hear some comments if people have around that as well. Now, this is what it does when you're living through a perfect storm of data, of technology change and transformation. And many of you, I'm assuming here, might be much younger than me. Would like to seek some feedback in terms of, can you name what comes up next on the screen? Feel free to chat, put it in the chat. If you want to use voice, I'm okay with that. I don't know if that's enabled or not, but if you want to share in the chat or if you want to voice it out, please feel free to let me know what is this. Anybody familiar with this? It's a pager. It's actually one of the more advanced two-way pagers, actually. So I hope most of you have seen it or in way, shape, or form. Thanks, Ankita, for identifying this. The next one, can you, by the way, see any of this being used now? No? Okay, you see a nodding, and I'm sure people are agreeing with that. This was my first phone, actually, when I was in Singapore in 2003, Nokia 3310, very cutting edge at that point. This is not the 3300, this is 3310, actually, or one of the two, actually, but very, very interesting model. Anybody using this phone today? Anybody can find this phone today? It actually has a higher market value now than it was actually released previously, because now it is kind of a collector's item. So, yeah. Oh, you have one. Yeah. Okay, awesome. Maybe you probably want to retain it. If it is working, it might be worth much more in a few years from now, actually. And then this one probably is very interesting. Okay, Ankita seems to know all of them, but any of you actually seen and used a real typewriter? Yeah, Now, a lot of you might have seen it in probably movies or previous period, real life. Okay. Oh yeah, that's it. Okay, from that generation. Yeah, cool. Yeah, this is again one of the newer ones or the latest models actually, which we had for this, and it's quite interesting now. So when we started learning computers, the first classes or thing we had to learn was to actually type. So we actually went and there was WPM, words per minute. So we had to pass a 50, 60 words per minute kind of test to even enter a computer lab, which was a very interesting thing. So it had nothing to do with typing actually. That's what I realized, because I never passed it actually. So very ashamed of that. But I used to type with one hand always. And now I can do it more hand, but I used to type with one hand and I never passed the 50 words per minute. But that was one of the prerequisites when we were trying to learn computers. So that is, and this phenomenon actually will continue. So yeah, these are spread over a larger period of time. But what the CEO of Accenture actually says here, that many of the Fortune 500 will actually disappear very soon, not at the same spaced out time period actually what we have. And this was said in a World Economic Forum meeting. So I'm going to share a few cliche examples, and I'm calling them cliche myself. So it's a kind of contrarian view here, but I don't, when we talk about digital transformation, yeah, some of these examples are beaten to death, right? Autonomous cars is always the first one. You can take a taxi from Dubai. If you're getting late for flight from the city center to the airport, you can actually take the flying taxi, which is kind of a helicopter kind of thing. Yes, you can. It is actually available as a service. Yes. Yeah, I don't know if they stopped it, but this is definitely there. And self-driving cars now, Tesla is obviously there, but if you see the US body, Tesla is not even part of that. Everybody else, the traditional car makers, are now part of the autonomous government body, which is actually regulating and defining standards for autonomous cars. Smart homes, yeah, I think I just came from my boss's house and she entered without anything. So she can just put her hand and it allowed. All of us, many of us are wearing smartphone devices. They can capture a lot of things. Very good use case actually. Senior citizens, if they fall, they can actually get notified. Near and dear ones can get notified. It saves a lot of lives. Very interesting. And anybody experienced drone delivery? It hasn't started in Singapore. I was in the US when there was one of my friends was in the Bay Area and they had a pilot. It will freak you out actually when you see it happening first time. Somebody with a drone coming and dropping your stuff there. It can be quite interesting, but initially it will freak you out. But the applications and the misuse of this is phenomenal actually. So imagine somebody coming with a drone and trying to film you. And how do you regulate that and how you do this? How do they know that they are not interfering with your networks and things like that? So these are some of the cliche examples very commonly used when we talk about the digital transformation and all kind of business transformations, right? So I wanted to share something more rustic or more exotic in a way. So maybe I would like some feedback on this. Anybody familiar with what happens in aeroponics? My God, Ankita knows everything. Yes. Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah, sorry. Just go ahead, please. You need water. It is indoor. What you're saying are actually absolutely correct facts. Thank you for that, Ankita. But it is essentially farming without soil. Can be indoor, can be outdoor actually. But it is essentially, you see what is missing there is no soil. Right? So what it allows you to do exactly like you said, and there is a company called Aero Farms actually. We work with them and they're one of our customers and they can monitor everything. What you can create soil-like conditions, but you need IoT technology to monitor and manage. Of course, one of the life principles which I learned from my MBA, so free trip here, is what you can't monitor, you can't manage. So this is one of the things. Anything you want to monitor, anything you want to control or manage, you will need to be having an ability to monitor that. And in aeroponics, you need to manage all the environmental things around that. is there an infestation there? Are you seeing some kind of insect? Are you seeing some kind of, let's say, rodent or something in that, right? So then there is a risk of contamination and potential harm to the crop, right? So, and you can actually, what it does is freeze away, because guess how many people are we on the planet now? Yeah, somewhere in between actually, but we will run out of space, and unless Elon hurries up and we can all move to Mars, we will run out of space here, because a lot of the space, if you do traditional farming, you need a lot of land. This takes away the ability to requirement to actually have land for this. You can, so Aerofarm does vertical farming, like much like Ankita mentioned. They can go, you can go into a skyscraper and you can actually be doing farming. It can be a farm. And it does not require any light. You can switch off the light. You can only turn on electricity, turn on the lighting as long as the plants require it. So you can actually emulate a day cycle, or you can turn on and give them the enough light to do their own photosynthesis, create their own food, and then switch off. So it can do different things. Now, this is very interesting, right? It's quite transformational, if you ask me. I'm just going to move to the next part, and pardon for overlaying this, but anybody know about this? So aeroponics was, do you agree aeroponics is quite cool and it is transformational, it gives us a lot of benefit, it does all of that. Very quickly got transformed, and even better solution came out, which is hydroponics. So here you are actually in a symbiotic relationship. So the waste from the plants, which is carbon dioxide, is actually funneled into the water, and then you actually becomes input for the fish. So this is the pace of transformation which is happening. You have a very cool technology created, and a lot of players, by the way, in aeroponics as well today. But you can actually have a symbiotic cycle, and you can do two businesses. So you can be rearing fish and producing food, crop at the same time. And of course, it doesn't take away completely the need for soil, but you have to do this. So this is what an idea and a better idea can do. And these are some of the way you can do transformation, not just in developed world, not just in restricted or remote areas or certain areas of the planet. You can actually do across the world, everywhere. And eliminating the challenges which we had, like requirements for soil, requirement for other things, and actually generating zero waste in a way. You reuse the waste for one process to another. There are some more examples of symbiotic relationships like this, which we can actually be used into this. So to me, this may not be a technology solution, but it can be enabled with technology, because you need to monitor the fish. You need to make sure you don't overspend carbon dioxide into this, and then kill them, or do one of this, and your balance needs to be maintained, and you need to monitor, and all of that can be enabled with technology. So that is where a lot of this comes in. So some of this I find quite motivating from an idea perspective and the thought perspective. Another one which is very close, again, I talked about sports right now. Anybody want to share any feedback? And we seem to have a quite group on the chat today, but you can see there are augmented reality at play here. So the original stream and pretty much everything you watch in live sports today, any kind, I mean, almost all commercial professional sport has this today. Even if you see cricket, you're seeing American soccer, American football, the line which they have is actually artificially created on the screen. It's not really there on the field. On the field of play, they don't draw a line, but from a spectator perspective, you can see that. A sport like Formula One, where you actually would not be able to see the car when you're in the race at the racetrack, you can actually see it from probably 60 or 70 different angles at any point in time. And high-speed, slow-motion cameras capture everything, including a blink of a driver's eye within a very big helmet, within a very big car, and it is very close to the ground. But what you can do from a business perspective is monetize this. So you see the original feed, which is there in the top corner in the left-hand side, it does not have, and it shows the in-stadium ad. So you can see the Bet Victor ad, which is there actually, which is being displayed in real time. Now, if you go to virtual feed one, you will see an enterprise ad, which is probably for the US market, because Enterprise is a car rental company in the US. And Vitality is actually in maybe in Singapore, maybe in UK. And similarly, Coca-Cola maybe anywhere else in the world, probably. But the thing is, you can share and sell the same stream and contextualize by geo in this case. But you can also do it by language. You can also do it by different countries. There are many, many different applications. But from a business application perspective, it lets you monetize your investment in the, and if you're interested, the link is there. I'll be happy to share this with the organizers, and you can actually go and read more about this, but you can actually make different business model, which would not have been possible previously with this, right? So this is all part of a augmented reality, which is making it real in our life. Now, here is where it gets really interesting for somebody like people on the call, like I'm again assuming you're very, very young compared to me, because you're just starting off in your careers. The interesting part is we have just started. In fact, by some estimates, which I have here, we only analyze 1% of the data still. And majority of it remains to be analyzed very soon, which all the history of mankind, we have just got started. We have just started monetizing our data. We have just started mining our data for analysis. We have been producing data, but we have been using it for a routine consumption as a proof of record more than actually getting insights proactively and using them for our benefit. Right? So that's the interesting part. So you all have a huge opportunity to capitalize, right? And that's what we are going to talk about a little bit more. But that comes with a lot of change. Now, it may not really be as much impactful for all of you, assuming you're just starting out from your education and you're probably going to get into the corporate world and start working. But you have to change. For a person who has already been doing, a person who has been having some collateral experience, this can be a lot of change and significant change. And there are some examples of that which I would like to share. So what we see is today, and I'm just listing, this is not by any means a comprehensive list, but customers and companies and industries are adopting this by, if I can say, wholeheartedly in any way. So retail, there are applications in terms of smart mirrors, which can actually replace your trial rooms completely. Just-in-time deliveries, stock management. Of course, stock is very, very simple one, but complete customer experience, enhanced customer experience, where you can try 20 dresses without actually having to try 20 dresses physically. And they exactly take your, there are sensor-based systems which can actually take your body geometry and tell exactly how it will look. And you pick off the shelf and they can actually know which clothing item or what item you want to try. And then they can show you how it looks like. There is technology available today to do that. And there are examples exactly like this into every industry. I think it's beyond the scope of discussion if you spend a lot of time in terms of all of this. But one which are very close, couple of them which are very close to my heart is actually the healthcare and life sciences, where you can do patient monitoring. So you can actually track the patient. You can actually track, there are always, critical patients are, especially in ICU patients or patients who are gravely ill, need special care and need 24-hour kind of monitoring, which is not possible today. While we try to have a person in the room in an ICU and there will be people there who will try to monitor, you don't have. But when you actually use technology, IoT technology and sensors, hooking up into the existing systems which they have, you can actually track patients every minute, every second of the day. And they can be used for saving lives. So that's really, really powerful. And then there are a lot of other tools which governments use to actually prevent terrorism by using AI, ML models to actually analyze paper trails, which people try to cover across multiple layers. And actually you can use those to advantage and save nefarious activities from actually happening. So just again, the most biggest impact, because it's where most of our resources are spent, is actually in the finance, right? And let's look at what is happening. And we are actually sitting in the center of the fintech industry in the world. So Singapore is unofficially the fintech capital of the world. There are more than 600 fintech companies in Singapore. I mean, my information probably is 1 year back, so there will be probably many more already now. And there are many conferences, many seminars around this if you're interested. But it is a very heavily regulated industry which is seeking innovation by having fintech companies, because traditional players, and going back to the Fortune 500 discussion, many Fortune 500 companies are traditional banks, and they have the technical debt of legacy infrastructure. Most of the fintech companies actually don't have that technical debt. They have the ability to be very agile. They have the ability to transform and deliver new services. Today, many banking, if I don't know how many of you had exposure to internet banking or banking application, online banking application 10, 15 years ago. Today, banking application looks very similar to a social media platform. It's very cool, very quick, everything you can do. You can see your money, and now you can see a web page, which is like a bank with the internet banking page, like where your money is coming from and where it goes. I've seen some of those websites, like banking websites. But if you looked at it 10 years ago, it would be a balance sheet, actually. It will look like you are looking at an Excel sheet on a web page. And that's how we are seeing a lot of change. But some of the services, so I can give you a much more concrete example, like any of you familiar with KYC, which is Know Your Customer. It's a regulatory requirement in all parts of the country, all parts of the world, where you are supposed to do regular verification to prevent fraudulent transactions and money laundering and all kinds of bad things which happen with that. You always have to validate your customers on a regular basis. Today, and typically, I can give you an example. A decade ago, this activity used to take about 3 to 4 weeks, because you have to get the person to submit their proof of ID, and then you have to take their address and correlate that information, and it's all in physical form, and then somebody has to cross-validate it. Maybe you outsource it, the process, to somebody, and they will do that, and then they come back with the report, and then the ones which are suspect go for another round and things like that. Today, KYC can happen online. There are companies which actually do that service as a service, not even a bank. They offer that as a service to banks, and they can do that in less than 10 seconds across 100 countries. So you can give a national ID or a FIN ID or any kind of proof which you have from 100 different countries, and they actually maintain the databases, and they can verify a customer's ID in less than 10 seconds online. So banks don't need to invest in that. Banks don't need to create the infrastructure for that. They can actually just subscribe to the services and hook into the APIs for that, and then consume that service in their existing application. So that's the pace of what the fintech, this is a couple of examples of what fintechs are doing for us and driving our life at a very, very rapid pace. Okay. And the same is true for industry, IoT. I mean, industry is actually, there are 4 generations now, and we are in industry 4.0 from a transition or generation perspective. The first one was steam and water, second was electrification, third was electronics, and now we are actually into the digital age, actually. So I don't want to spend into each one of them, but from a shape perspective, a couple of examples I want to share what it changes and what it does. So it sounds like a buzzword, but it is really a lot of changes, like a lot of enabling technologies have actually brought in the scale. So the world has kind of collapsed with cloud computing, with the internet being accessible, with the digital technology and sensors being available for everything. So today, like I said in the video, which we watched earlier, everything can be monitored and can be tracked. Anything which was dumb and dead can be actually wired and connected, and they can actually become smart. And you can actually increase your production by just doing 3D printing. And you can time to design, time to deploy, time to value is much more accelerated today. in Industry 4.0. And many of you might have seen this as a traditional supply chain, and we used to use algorithms like LIFO, FIFO, and just-in-time was very, very cool, very cutting edge. You actually bought stuff only when you needed it and very close to what you needed it. It has actually transformed into a digital supply network, and everything is actually monitored by smart factory today. So you don't have to worry. You don't even have to do a procurement process. Your entire supply chain is connected. You have redundancies built in. You actually have all the business criteria you actually state upfront, and you want to have dual vendor strategy. You want to have automated fulfillment. You want to have distribution across regions, different countries, meet the regulation, meet the requirements. All of that can be covered today with digital supply networks. So it makes a lot of sense for industry, and that's where we are seeing we are like people get quite irritated when they can't get their PS5 immediately, right? And then you have to queue and you have regulated supply and things like that. So ultimately, do you think people wait, or do you think if Sony cannot produce it fast enough or cannot get it to their end user who wants to buy it today, what happens? Ultimately, Sony ends up losing. They might have a huge artificial demand, but it does not get fulfilled, and they eventually end up losing. So Xbox may come out with a faster, better version very soon, and they actually end up losing and not capitalizing the potential demand they had for this thing. So it is in today's world, matching and beating the expectation is very, very required. So at this point, I'm just going to take a break, and I'll actually share another video which we can have a look at.
A data scientist is a person who uses data to solve problems, uncover patterns, and gain insight. They often work in businesses and organizations which gather and curate large data sets. A data scientist may leverage knowledge from statistics, computer programming, databases, machine learning, and mathematical modeling to achieve their goals. A day in the life of a data scientist. First, the data scientist needs to understand the business or organizational issues. Then, they look for data. They may need to set up an experiment to acquire the data, or the data may already exist somewhere in. If an experiment is required, it is important to write down the hypothesis before proceeding. Once the data is gathered, it is checked and cleaned. Then, the right tools for modeling are chosen. For example, R, Python, or another software package. The data and results are then analyzed using visualization tools. The data scientist is looking for important insights and trends and checking their hypothesis. Statistical tests are used to check the results are robust and valid. The learnings, results, and insights are communicated to the stakeholders, usually with recommendations. For example, a data scientist working for a transport company might identify particular routes that are inefficient and recommend solutions to them more efficient. With the advent of the data age, we can all now, with the help of data scientists, get better insights and make better data-driven decisions.
So just very quick. Yeah. So very quickly, this is something which I would definitely recommend all of you. Again, if you can go and see the Expert Models website, a lot of fun information about that, a lot of interesting stuff. But what I wanted to touch upon, obviously Harvard has said this, and probably many of you aspire to be a data scientist or have some kind of something associated to do with that. What you need to understand is there are 4 key things required for that. One is statistics, programming, logic, and then you also need domain knowledge. So that is most critical part, and a lot of people actually come in, and you always have the ability to get 3 out of the 4. But domain knowledge is something you actually have to acquire over the years. Like in a telco industry, the key metric is ARPU, average return per user. So they are focused on how they can drive their ARPU up. In finance, FSI, you may want to worry about the CRR, how much I have to keep with the regulator and still be able to run. So if I can demonstrate a better compliance posture, I can keep less guarantee money with the regulator and actually use my money more effectively. So be more competitive and so on and so forth. So every field or every vertical or every line of business has a key metric, not just one, but they might be doing many, many metric. And that's what comes in with the experience part. So, which is what makes some of this very difficult, right, from a data scientist perspective. And the other three are being vehemently attacked by all the technology providers. So today, you can actually attach low code, no code solutions to actually do the other parts, the statistics, the coding, and the business algorithms. You can actually automatically attach. So there are many, many. H2O.ai is one such startup, which is completely almost no code. You can actually drag and drop, and they can do try 40 or 50 different algorithms and models for you and tell you how your data fits to which one, and whether you need to do feature engineering or which one will give you the best result out of the box. So projects which used to take 9 months to years, they can actually help you execute in less than 2 weeks. But the domain knowledge part is what we need to acquire and we need to retain and we need to build on, because that part is very difficult. I say this with some circumspect response most of the time, because people think there are better ways. People will eventually figure out to build that as well into code. And I'm sure that is coming down the line. But at this point in time, at least safely for the next 5 to 10 years, domain knowledge will actually be very highly sought after, because the other three part can be automated, will get progressively better resolved as it is. So I think I just want to share a little bit in terms of how people view AI. And in the interest of time, I think there are different views people have. You might look at, depending on how you see this. Some of this we are using, some of them are from old movies. If you are not familiar with them, you can go and look them up. But devices can be considered. We thought washing machines were smart in our day because you didn't have to tell it and it would automatically wash your clothes. Dishwashers were smart as well when we started doing it. And now there are machines which can actually send text to you when your clothes are washed. So more work for me, but that's interesting. But at least they can communicate back, right? But I think from a definition perspective, it's just there. We know about it. Most of you, I'm sure, are very well aware of this. If you're not, any comment, please let me know. I don't want to go through this in terms of this, but if there are comments, we are happy to dabble into that. But what it means is essentially machine learning, you have to tell what parameters you want to correlate it with, and then it will do a prediction or a result or an analysis or a regression or whatever you're trying to do with that. And deep learning, essentially, it figures out by itself. It does not require you to do any kind of feature learning. So different models, different use cases. Typically, deep learning requires more infrastructure and more investment to start off with, and typically it's done on a larger data set and a more complex problem. But it is, the lines are blurring. When we started learning about AI, this was very clear distinction. And now with low code and no code models, the lines are actually blurring because they use neural networks. And now with the explosion in the infrastructure, with the cloud computing and quantum computing becoming available, many people try to use deep learning for even the simplest problems, where a simple prediction analysis or this would have been very, very straightforward. So depends on the use case. So don't over-engineer and don't over-invest. That's the lesson here. But I can share an example. I don't see a lot of people online here, so I don't know how that will work, but I can share a couple of examples. If you go to this website, obviously it's the hosted website for interest. So there are a lot of advertisements which pop up on this, but you can upload a not so clear photo and you can upload a clear photo and see the difference in terms of how an AI algorithm behaves. I would love to show that, but since a lot of you are online, it would probably be, you'd have to do a lot of jugglery and you'll be probably looking at my browser window for a longer period of time. But you should try to do that. You can try this, and this illustrates very quickly. I took a recent photo, which is a little bit blurry and not the cleanest, and it shows my age as 40. And I have one from 3 years ago, which is exactly correct. And it's much more cleaner and high res. And it shows my age there as 44. So which you, by simple math, you can kind of deduce I'm 47 right now. So I had one which is taken for this exercise and it's not so very clean. And when you do that, because of the blurriness and not being clean, it actually comes up as 40. But I have a 3-year older picture and it actually comes up pretty accurate. So if you have time, you can actually give it a go, try it with your different photos, and you can kind of make sense on this, how efficient and how easy it is now from application perspective where you can do this. Now you might say, okay, this is very cool to do as an activity, but what is the use case around this? And we actually build a solution for an FSI insurance company in India, where they are having a data science project for fraud detection. And we had 400,000 records available with us. And we used the low-code, no-code approach, which I talked about, our partner from H2O.ai. And we could detect 8,000 fraudulent cases in 400,000 records itself. So the same image was being submitted for multiple claims. And we saw many such instances of that within that data as well. So the technology pays for itself. It can help actually them, because if they did not detect that and did not have the ability to do this, and this is only on a 2-week test data. So the ability to do this in real time for hundreds and thousands of records and images and correlate them across all of them, past, present, and future, whatever you have in the database, actually gives them a lot of business revenue, which they would have had leakage actually, and they provisioned for that loss, and they don't have the ability to find out that. So track that loss actually. So we can actually do this. So simple technology tool like which can actually match up and measure this thing can actually help you do that. Or if a record is older than what you claim, they can also tell you that, hey, this is from your previous injury 10 years ago, because people are very creative and there are always all kinds of fun stuff happening, but you can actually build in those protection for your business against that. So we all talked about the goodness and we talked about the things which we enable IT, but there are certain barriers to AI adoption as well, right? So one of this is the problem definition itself. So we have a Commonwealth Bank in Australia, which has a mandate now to attach AI to every application they have. And typically in a banking application, I have been with banks for a very long time, a majority of my previous career as well. Banks typically have anywhere between 300 to 500 business applications running to run their functions successfully. If you try to attach AI to everything you have, it might be an overkill in some cases. So defining the problem and trying to get the value, because there is a huge desire and you see the success around that, you may actually be over-rotating on a problem as well sometimes, and that is what you want to avoid. So problem definition, scope is very important. Now, then we come to the data part, which is interestingly the most sought after part, because data is the new oil, it is the money, it is the part where you get the value. And that's where you realize that in data science, 80% is actually manipulating the data or cleaning the data, getting the right data. So the algorithm part, once you figure out which algorithm is best fit and what it gives you the desired levels of accuracy of the result, that is pretty much set actually. The boring part is actually the creation of the data pipeline, data engineering, cleaning the data, getting it from different sources, getting it into a consumable format and storing it and retaining it and protecting it actually. So it involves a lot of activity before it can be consumed for that part, right? So the data prep part is typically very challenging. And then the infra involved. So you have to always be cautious around that. So the traditional infra which we have does not lend itself very well for this. Like applications consume storage or place where they store their data in a file or block protocols. And typically most of these applications are designed for OLTP, online transaction processing. They are not designed for an analytic platform. So you require different types of infra for this. And typically now with the advent of cloud computing, that has become easy. So the infra problem is largely solved. And then we come to the two parts, which is where you and I come in, skills and leadership parts. And those are the problems which are by far the most difficult to solve. And that's what we'll talk a little bit about, because this is where the people part comes in and the skills part come in and the leadership part comes in. Now, I just wanted to share how big this is. And this is actually from a few years ago. I don't know if there is a timestamp there, but a company like Huawei actually runs this boot camps regularly. And there are many such companies who do that, but they are employing a lot of people in that. So there is a huge demand in terms of AI professionals, how they are sought after and how they are available from a business perspective. Sorry, I didn't realize my slide heading was being covered all the while. So apologize for that. But they actually invest in training people as well. So while you are actually studying, I would encourage each one of you to actually engage into such forums, seminars. There are, you can, I'm sure many of you are familiar with Meetup. Meetup is a app/website where you can go and see what is happening around you on everything, typically. So if you sign up for Meetup sessions in Singapore, they will tell you if they're, and you just have to choose your interests, and they will actually tell you whenever any of these things are coming. And there are many such tools which you can use. So I would encourage you to participate. There are a lot of free content, a lot of interesting seminars happening, and most of them would actually have a free admission for students, or they would have a very nominal fee for a student, actually. In fact, FinTech Festival happens in Singapore towards the end of the year, November, December every year. And they have, I think, a free admission for students, or they have a very nominal fee as well for students as well. So I would strongly encourage that to be also another one you may want to track and participate in. So quickly, moving along and sharing in terms of what are the types of skills, what are the skills needed, what are the leadership qualities. And this is, again, by the way, most of it is from my reading, and I love to read some of the books. We love to read self-help books now as you get old, probably. But I wouldn't say these are more from my experiences. So you can take it with a pinch of salt, you can take it with a kilo of salt, or whatever it is worth. But I will be more than happy to get any feedback if you have any. Right? So one of the biggest things you have is to have a positive attitude. And you need to actually be having the right technical skills and the business skills. Like I said, there are many technical skills required for that. The domain knowledge cannot be, unfortunately, acquired directly as an injection, as a course or something, but you can get the mentorship from that. So you can look for people who are looking for mentors. You can kind of schedule with them, meet for people. I mentor a lot of people as well. People who reach out to me. Of course, my son wouldn't listen to me because I'm his father, so he absolutely doesn't listen to me. Both my sons don't listen to me from that perspective, but a lot of other people actually are. This is actually my 5th college or university I'm engaged with. I've also done sessions for SPJ in Dubai, Sydney, a lot of them in Singapore, SIM. Just last month I had one in SIM, SIT as well, but try to do this, but a lot of young talent, and I like to get engaged and introduced with the people of this generation who are next-gen leaders. So try to share that. Coming back after the self-promotion, high tolerance for ambiguity. So we live in a very dynamic world. Going back to the example of aeroponics and hydroponics. Very short turnaround. You invest something really cool, and then 6 months later, somebody can better your idea. Can be. So we live in a very, and you cannot wait for a lot of, and this always comes up, and I'll probably come back again to that in the end as well. There is always a challenge between perfectionism and professionalism. So you will never have all the information, and you cannot have the perfect solution. That's why software release cycles are that way. You add some feature, you go, and you add more features in the next release, and you do new capabilities, and you do that. So you are never ever done. So there is a fine balance between having a perfectionist approach and having a professional. Not to say you want to be shoddy in your job, and there is a balance again, but that's one of the things you will have to come. So you always have to be prepared to work in an ambiguous environment and make business decisions with your gut, and we'll look at them as well, how to make that, do those choices. But you have to make rapid commitments to that. And if you're familiar with the Scrum cycles today, they run on a daily basis, not even a weekly basis today. So it is supposed to be like You decide on what you're going to do today, and then you release that, right? That allows continuous innovation and continuous delivery, right, today. So, and then you want to focus on your brand today. Like, interestingly, I know when we are hiring coders or programmers or software engineers today, I have seen people not saying, don't share your resume, share your work. So you can share your GitHub profile, you can share your repo, you can share your website, rather than actually sharing your resume. People are not interested in reading a piece of paper. People want to see the work today. So having a very powerful brand is actually very, very important. Again, request any feedback on this because it helps me get better as well. And a little bit of a laundry list here, but there are 12 things I kind of culled from a lot of discussion with industry peers and a lot of discussion with team members, and probably about 500 such interaction with participants like this, and goes on to the as you progress kind of thing. So the color coding kind of goes from individual to the team kind of thing, if you go from a collaboration perspective. So you start with teamwork as an individual. That is a very key part because you're learning. You want to be able to do a lot of this thing. And I will circle back to that when I come towards the end, when I talk about strengths versus weaknesses, actually. So teamwork is super important from that. Even more important is communication. So I cover the APJ region. Before that, I was covering Southeast Asia, which is 22 countries. None of them is actually English speaking. Primary language is English, none of them. So I manage team members who are from Mongolia, Pakistan, Vietnam, Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, Japan. Many of them don't actually speak English as their first language. English is, by the way, not my first language as well. So communication becomes very, very important. And there are lots of tools. Today, I can read mails from my Korean colleagues. They type it in Korean, but when it comes to me, Outlook actually translates it in real time for me. But we did not have such tools probably 5 years ago, and we're still managing them. So it's a lot of this is required, and you need to be, one thing I have seen in a dramatic change is going from being verbose and using fancy language to being very lucid and very succinct. And the reason for that is also coming up next is the shortening of the attention span for people. So today, the focus is actually on being lucid or very simple and very succinct, to the point. You don't want to be verbose, and you don't want to be elaborate about something, and you don't want to use unnecessary heavy language, so to say. Again, I think the initiative is given today's world, in a very competitive world. If you can't take initiative, if you don't have the drive to succeed, very unlikely that you would succeed. So I'll leave it at that, but if there is a comment around that, I'm happy to address that in more detail. When I say vision, it means like, what is your personal vision? And we have seen this more so in this current quarter, as the current economic situation we are in. We see a lot of the companies which we always thought were very solid, even like companies like Manga or Fang, whichever way you address them, have actually had to let people go. Now, that is always a very, very difficult choice for anybody to make, but they are actually putting their business first in terms of how they are approaching it. And that's where the vision part comes in. So that's where it goes back to the point which I referred, that try to do something which you enjoy doing, because then you will naturally be very good at it and you will enjoy doing that. So if you know your vision is to do something which helps people connect, try to do that. Working through a social media, working through an algorithm, working on anything which you're trying to do. Doesn't matter which company you're working for. If you're passionate about that, the IP retains with the person, actually. I mean, in the brain. Obviously, there are conditions to your employment where you don't take the code from one company and start using it in another company. That's not what I mean when I say the IP comes with you. But your brain, your memory, your experience obviously travels with you. So try to have your vision in terms of where you see yourself 3 years from now. I typically suggest to my mentees not to worry too much about long-term career at this point. especially when they are starting off their career, they have the ability to do fail fast actually, or do some experimentation, because we might think we might really enjoy doing that. And you may find out when you get to there that it is not the best thing which you wanted to do, and you may be finding something else to do. I have one of the person who actually went into finance, and they were from a doctor family. My father is doctor, mother is doctor, and they have a whole household full of doctors actually. And the person was like, no, I'm going to go and do finance. And eventually they did finance, they studied to be an analyst, and the kind of job they actually had to do was go and sell the product. That's what their major requirement is for. So that's when then they kind of trailed back, scaled back, and went and did doctorate again. So that's an extreme example, I know, but the capability was there, but they obviously didn't want to do it for whatever reasons. So you have the ability to do that. And that's where I would say, don't worry about the long term, that 15 years from now, I want to be there. Try to think about 2 years, 5 years horizon first. So try to do that, and then you would actually probably meet more success in that. I think there are few which are very obvious. Problem solving, adaptability, like we talked about the ambiguity part. You have to do that, but you have to do it in a very ambiguous environment. So problem solving, we are all very good at. You are being exposed to in this fantastic institution. You are getting exposed to a lot of tools, sets, and frameworks to how apply. And a lot of them will be really helpful in your corporate life as well. But you have to do them in the realm of reality where a lot of ambiguity is there. So you will not have all the data, you will not have all the information, and you will not have the most conducive environment to do those decisions. So you have to make tough calls, and you have to make some decisions which may not be there. So you need to be having a lot of conviction around yourself to do that. And then, like I said, ambiguity is caused by change. So you should be able to look at change positively. You need to be able to accept change. You may not be thrilled about it. Like, nobody's happy when so many people have being impacted about their jobs. But they have to move on, and they have to pull themselves up. They should not be distressed, should not be depressed in any form or way, shape, or form. It's not a reflection on the person's capability, and they need to be able to have that conviction for themselves. Again, leading to the fast part, moving along, fast decision making is very, very key. And then it gets really difficult. The yellow/orange skills are the ones which, as you progress along in your career, become more and more difficult and challenging to attain. So innovation, I mean, this is a very often used word, much abused word in terms of what you do, but innovating yourself or ability to rediscover yourself if required, or course correct on a regular basis is also very important. So you need, and that can only come from self-awareness. So if you are self-aware, you would be in a position to actually tally back to your vision and see, are you in the same direction, or do you need course correction? And you need to be able to innovate yourself to actually move in that direction. Creativity, again, very difficult to teach. And that's why it is one of the most irreplaceable skills, which no form of AI today can kind of take away, in a way, if you're worried about that, right? A lot of people are worried about, you can see memes, like a million memes on coders losing their job to ChatGPT. If you have the ability to actually write code, like even today, the problem which is not solved is, can you get back to source code from the executable? If you can solve that problem, I can guarantee you will be a zillionaire today. But obviously it's a problem still there, but that's a more unrealistic problem I'm talking about. But the one we saw in the data scientist video, which is number one problem in math still, which is the shortest distance between 2 points. Now you might say, yeah, that's a straight line, right? This guy is really nuts, right? Yes, in geometry, yes. In real world, when you're trying to do Uber, Grab, Gojek, and they have to deliver, or they have to get the car available to their requesters or end customers at any point in time, it is still one of the biggest problems which is not successfully solved in the world. And there are max computers, universities in the US, universities all across the world trying to solve it better. So if you can come up with the algorithm which can actually take into consideration different things, all the factors, and actually be better than what they are already, there are many, many applications and many, many people who are ready to buy it off your hand today. Because irrespective of how you see, you all experience long wait times with Grab and Gojek or whatever you might have, right? So there is still that potential. We haven't still solved that problem. We haven't still mined the data enough to actually get the result which people now desire. People actually move away from the website in less than 10 seconds today if it doesn't respond. The behavioral, which used to be like a decade ago, people would actually wait for a minute. Have you ever waited on a minute on a page today if it doesn't load? You don't need that 404 to come up, actually. You don't wait for the 404 to come up. If it doesn't start responding in few seconds, we are gone. We actually are going. You already lost that business opportunity. Right? And then all of these things, you might, some of this, I always get some feedback around why organization is rated so highly here. But that is what keeps the sense of our calm around you. That's what helps you. Organization is not just the physical organization of everything around you, but organization of your ideas, because that helps you in communication. Organization of your thought, that helps you with your vision. Organization of your character, which helps you with your integrity. Organization of your empathy, which helps you with your teamwork and your success. So that's where, so it's a much broader term in terms of where it is applied to, the context behind it, it actually becomes much larger. And lastly is the leadership. So now this is where I would typically get a question, okay, but I'm an individual contributor, or I'm just starting off in my life. Leadership and manager is two very different functions, so to say. Everybody can be a leader. Everybody can demonstrate leadership. Leadership is actually the ability to go above and beyond and understand the mission of what role you are playing in, whether it's a school event you're attending for your child, or whether you are in your professional setting where you see a business problem not being solved and you take an initiative to try to solve it itself. Not necessarily solve it all the way, but you observe and you report and you actually are curious enough to actually act on it. Or you see somebody needs some help, not when they come and ask you for help. You just go and ask, hey, can I help you with something? I'm not talking about, of course, going and helping them on their next assignment. Don't do that thing. Don't get them into and yourself into trouble, but something like that. In real world, when you're corporate, you actually contribute larger and contribute even when people are not asking. You can, everybody can be a leader, actually. And that behavior is definitely rewarded in the corporate world, in general life as well, all the while, always. So having that drive, because those kind of things actually manifest themselves very, very quickly and very widely as well. So those are some of the soft skills required. Again, if you note one thing, none of this is actually replaceable. All the soft skills, actually, what we attain and what we retain can't be replaced. So I talked about this and how do you make an impression? So you got the skills. We talked about the requirement. We talked about the technology and the areas required. And then we talked about the skill. So you got the skills as well. But how do you communicate that? How do you get it across? Right? Now, this is from a research from Microsoft, actually. And you can go and check this, but our attention span is actually lower than a goldfish in a fish bowl today. And I say this, and a lot of you are not here, but you can ask yourself how many times you have checked your phone in the last 1.5 hours. Everybody who is on the call, including myself, by the way, while presenting also, I have actually managed to sneak a peek in terms of my father has SMS'd me or what has happened. It's just the nature of the beast. We are too digitally involved in our life today, right? So the attention span, and that's what is the challenge today. Have I lost some of you during the 1.5 hours? 100%. But how do you get your point across in that short attention span which you have? That is a big challenge we have and which we will always face. I face every day when I'm communicating with my team because of the language challenge, because of the regional challenge, because of various different challenges we have. But also as the attention challenge. They are also every language, everything, digital tools are involved in our lives. Screens are present in our life in all various shapes, forms, factor, whether it's a small form factor, medium form factor, large form factor, everything. All kinds of form factors. We have screens in front of us shouting for attention, right? And grabbing our attention. So how do you get your point across in an interview, critical interview you are having, or looking for your spouse, or trying to do that? How do you come across? You have the skill, you have the right thing, right? That brings us to the next part of the discussion. And again, like I said, this is mostly from my experience, so would appreciate any feedback people might have. So my suggestion is we actually approach to them at 3 levels: head, gut, and heart. Typically, I would, if it's in person, and I would encourage anybody to have any questions. Head is obviously very easy. You have to share the facts, the data, the programs you have written, the great work you have done, the skills you have acquired, the success you have, why you believe you would be able to do that task at hand, or why you would want to do this project. It may not necessarily, again, not just speaking in terms of the job interview, but you're talking to your boss about a race, or you're talking about them about a bigger position or a different role or a project you want to get onto, right? Everything. Or you're trying to convince your spouse about something, why it's great to move to some other place, or what you want to do, why you want to do that. The surefire way of getting a positive outcome or trying to get closer to your outcome you desire is to appeal to them on all 3 levels: head, gut, and heart. Gut is typically, as the word says, you can actually share, oh, he's a great person. Somebody else comes and tells you, oh, you should listen to Sidharth Joshi for 1 hour. You take a chance, right? But if he comes and says himself, oh, you should listen to me, please sit down and listen to me for 1.5 hours, we probably very less chance, right? If you bumped into me on one of the MRT or one of the movie theaters or malls or something in Singapore, and I said, hey, come, grab, sit down, and I'm going to give you the exact same discussion. Very unlikely you would have sat there for 2 hours, right? And listened to that. So sometimes testimonials and things like that help you. And then you also always want to talk about their feeling. What's in it for them? Give them what they want. What emotion what are they getting out of it? What dopamine rush they can get actually out of it? Why it will be good for them? How will they feel if they actually invest in that? Because it's an investment, right? This 2 hours of your life, you are not going to get back no matter what you do. We tend to think of time in a circular fashion, but it's not circular. It's a linear line. This is my most common observation which we have, and we are actually, the whole system is kind of rigged, if I can call it that, because all our clocks are actually circular. Our watches, typically, wall clocks are circular and things like that. So we get the feeling that, oh, 6 a.m. tomorrow is going to be same as 6 a.m. today. It's not, it's a different day. And you only get one of each day in your life. 80 years, 80, 90, whatever years the average lifespan might be. So we tend to think of time in a circular fashion, but it's not really circular actually. So this is the 3 things you want to approach to in terms of appealing to them. And I want to share some examples, right? Because I talked about giving examples, and I think I can do this, but typically I try to do this in an interactive fashion. So what we see, and it is easy because when you have a reference or an example, you can relate to them, right? It's like somebody you don't know, which is me. If you're coming across me for the first time, it's kind of difficult to trust them, right? Whatever they're saying. You don't know, yeah, they might be, yeah, but you don't know the level of success they had, or maybe if you do the same thing, will it work for you or not? You don't really know. So you can take an example which is relatable, which people can identify and correlate on their own experience. That's what an example can do. But typically we see successful leaders or visionary leaders using these 3 strategies. And by the way, politicians are a great example of this, doing this. Yeah, typically I wouldn't say many favorable things about general politicians just because of the association we have, but they are really good at that, actually. If you observe, even generally, you can say most because they are trained on this and they actually do this for a living. One of the primary skills for them is to be actually able to communicate things in all form, fashion. Even like a best example I can give is a politician who is losing election by a huge margin will also be able to be very calm till the last thing is done and declared and everything also. And you can see they'll still be like, oh yeah, there's a great possibility. Even if the statistical probability might be like less than 1%, they'll still be very positive about this and will be very convincing in their answer in terms of, oh yeah, this will happen and then we'll be winning the election still. So a very dire situation as well, they'll do that, right? So anyway, mostly common things we see about this, and I'll share the leaders' examples as well, is, let's start off with the first one. We'll let Jack answer this, not Ankita. You are familiar with this gentleman, Jack? Awesome. Okay. So he's not known for giving very long, strong speeches, but he talks very clearly and very authentically. Even when he says the small thing, like bam, at the start of the pandemic, no, people are not sure whether there will be a thing, it will become a pandemic, it will be an endemic, what will be the thing. He said, I will not touch airline stocks for 2 years. Very clear, very, so definite. So it's not something, he's not giving a very strong, powerful speech or something like that, but he's very clear, very authentic in terms of what he's trying to say, for whatever reason it might be and how it impacts, but very, very interesting style in terms of communication strategy. The other one is quite interesting. Yeah. So, and this, I get the most response on this. So Lady Gaga, beyond her age, actually. She, obviously people think she's pretty out there in terms of her character and how she is, but the following she has and the way she's able to communicate and connect with the audience is amazing. The followers she has, right? And she has one of the biggest followings online on all social media platforms and everything. And she has her own views on everything, but the way she communicates and she connects with her following is very, very clear, very nice, very easy to talk. And she comes across, she does not use any fancy language. She does not use any special tone or something, and does not say things which are very simple, very clear, and comes across as very genuine. And then the last one, I think you definitely know about this as well, Mr. Branson. And I had the ability to see this on a recording, on a live stream, actually, when they were talking about, so Virgin dabbles into a lot of things. And this is from my time in UK, actually. They dabble in a lot of things, actually. Airlines, trains, planes, many other businesses, beer, drinks, alcohol, whatever, some kind of thing. They also have smart homes. Not many people know about this. And he was actually presenting about the Virgin house. And he did not talk about, oh, this is a modern house connected with IoT sensor. Everything is this, everything is that. No. He just said, you wake up at the time you set, because the alarm goes off exactly at that time. Your coffee is already ready. So your favorite music is playing in the background. Yes, so you are talking about you. Exactly. Thank you, Ankita. That is exactly. So what he's selling and what he's promoting is immaterial. They talk about the audience. They talk, what are you going to get, or how are you going to feel when you are in that dream house? Right? So that's what you need to do. So when correlating back to our example, if you're talking to your manager or your boss about, you should be on this project, you want to share with him what he gets or she gets from doing that choice. Right? That encourages them more to actually consider you favorably rather than the other way around. Okay, so this is, and again, I know these are kind of eclectic mix of, I have got enough feedback on this that these are eclectic examples which people typically don't associate with communication, visionary leaders or communicators, right? So quickly wrapping up, I just want to, and again, this is not kind of self-promotion here, but trying to share some things which have worked for me in terms of, and then talk about why it is important for you in terms of this, right? So my and lesson for every decade, right? I'm like in my 5th decade in my life now, and every decade has a different learning. My learning for my current decade is probably empathy. And this is a very interesting observation, because I largely had this since I started managing about 15 years ago. I started managing teams of people. And that's when I realized that empathy is probably the biggest quality you need to have as a leader. Having the ability to give the other person a benefit of the doubt and trying to look at it from their point of view. Maybe they had a discussion with their spouse, maybe their child is sick, and they just don't feel like doing something today. Right? They might have something else going on in their life, and that's probably impacting the way they are. So always being curious and actually trying to find out what is driving that has been a very big learning for me in probably the last decade, actually. So I think that is one of the biggest, previous 2 decades ago, I would have said drive, passion, rush, success, things like that, adrenaline. But at different points and different times in life. But I think now I would say this is definitely the biggest learn. This is the one I was referring to, because I always get, when we saw the skill, teamwork, collaboration coming in, I always get this question. So let's see, if nobody's participating, I ask myself the question, right? So why I always get this question, should I focus on my strengths or should I try to improve my weaknesses? So I believe life is a team sport. I mean, in a personal life, you might be an introvert. I am, by the way, nobody believes this, but I am an introvert by design in my personal space. I do this as a part of my job or my professional life, and I really enjoy speaking this. So, which is why I enjoy doing this. But in a personal space, I'm an introvert by choice. And a lot of people ask me, should I focus on improving my weakness? Why shouldn't I focus on my weaknesses and become a more well-rounded thing? So my answer is, and this is again purely my view, is life is a team sport. And we always, same is the life in your corporate life. If you're working in teams, you should couple yourself with people who complement you and cover your weaknesses actually, and allow you to flourish on your strengths. That's just my view. But my view is to be very good at what your strengths are. Like, I'm not really very good at cadence, but my sales counterpart is really good at cadence. And I'm good at the creative side of things, designing programs, coming up with campaigns, scouting for opportunities. So we complement each other. So from an engineering perspective and a design perspective, I would try to create the best possible solution, and he will try to maintain the cadence, run with the teams, collaborate with that, and make sure we stay on track and we don't spin off into a flywheel. So different things, like, so you always want to focus. And my gain is that if you get good at some things and build your strengths, it allows you to differentiate yourself and be more successful from that perspective, right? Again, for that end, I would say you need to, because we always have this negative connotation with a mistake or a failure. My suggestion is always, because when you succeed, it is one of the most overlooked things. You would have done some things wrong even when you succeeded as well. It's not a zero-sum game in life. So we typically don't introspect and reflect on our wins. We always reflect on our losses. So you should always try to learn from your mistakes, even when you won, even when you got the right outcome, what we could have done. So I typically summarize it in 3 ways, and I will ask any feedback if people are able to provide. I would be really grateful. Is what I could have done more, what I should have done differently, and what did you like? Always. So I just try to find those 3 things. What would you like to have? What would you have liked to see more of? What would you like me to do differently? And what do you like it as it is? Everything. It could be anything around this. And typically, I tried to generalize these three because again, and we don't have the time, but the power of three is like if you ask a long-winded survey, nobody wants to respond to that. So always try to keep that to the power of three. And this is kind of the most generic survey I can come up for three things. You can use pretty much for everything actually, for these three questions. But getting feedback is really, really important. And the approach part, again, self-awareness is the key. Before you actually have any kind of empathy, you need to actually be self-aware. Like I always know I'm not the smartest person in the room. Because if you start by that belief, you will not learn anything ever. If you think I really believe still, there are much more smarter people in this room than me right now as well. Always. Because the collective power of a team or the collective wisdom of a team is much larger than an individual, always. And you guys have different exposures, different experiences, different backgrounds, different exposures to teams and education and things like that. And definitely will have more experience for me to add, right? So always gain from that and be self-aware of that. So this is the part I was talking about. Better sorry than late or never, better late than never. So you actually have to choose. You will never have, in today's world, you will never ever have all the information. Again, you need things to be perfect. Yes, you want to do that, but you want to make sure you are not late in terms of that. So you always can be releasing. You need to have the first mover advantage. You need to take the time to value into consideration. You keep building a project which releases after 10 years. Is it of any use? Again, ChatGPT is one example. They can't scale at all. I mean, they obviously turned it on to monetize very, very quickly now because of the success it was. But even when it was released, it didn't have the scale at all. It will always break. And the UI was almost very bad. You wouldn't look at it today, right? It's very simplistic, very out there, but they actually just release it and they'll make it better. Now you can see just today we saw MS Teams is actually starting to use ChatGPT to take notes in your meetings. So they'll kind of use it against Zoom. Now Microsoft Teams will have huge integration. And now they can see that this technology is worth it. It can drive a lot of value. So they can monetize it in many different ways. But they did not wait for the full functional, best UI ready product. They just release it. Yeah, the engine is there. You type your query, boom, it just spits out the output. Not fancy, right? I mean, definitely. But that's the thing, right? You can MVP, right? You all, many of you heard of MVP, minimum viable product. So nobody develops the full product today. You release the MVP, you see the market tested, product market fit, and then you go with the next steps, right? So but that's a choice. And quickly summarizing toward the end, this is a tough one. Most people say, hey, I can do smart work now. There are different things, but to succeed, there's no really no shortcut. I mean, I would love to say otherwise and share a different view with you, but unfortunately, no. There's only one way, which is hard work, actually. And the last one probably is there for the very strong reason, because a lot of people think, oh, I can just get away with it. Yeah, you possibly can forever as well. But in the end, as you gather the years, it just catches up with you. And it's just very challenging in terms of what stories you have been telling all along. So I would, just for your own sake, I would say, honesty is the best policy. It's very difficult for a lot of people to stomach this and actually agree with it. But I would say, yeah, still, honesty is still the only policy, actually. And it just goes to, when you have integrity, you always can sleep peacefully, you can be at peace, you don't have to worry about what's going on with what and what did you communicate and what you're supposed to share, what you're not supposed to share, and things like that. It just doesn't end up it's not worth your while. So keep it simple, be honest, just face the consequence right there and then move along. Okay. So in the end, that's it from my perspective. I would say a very good quote from Michael Jordan. It's your life. Again, just play does not mean not taking it seriously. In fact, they took the game very, very seriously. But have fun, whatever you're doing, right? So try to find out, I mean, it doesn't need to be parties and bells and whistles and songs, but you really must enjoy. If you enjoy writing Python code, like my elder son loves writing code, and he wrote a Python code to actually generate maths problem for him, my younger son. So he enjoys the devilish pressure of giving him a lot more homework. So he wrote a code for that. So anything he has any chapter my younger son is learning, he would actually tweak the program, and then he can generate thousands of or more of practice programs for him, practice problems for him. So you just have to find out what you enjoy, and you can use it for that. Right? So have fun, and it's just a way of earning a living, right? So you need to follow your passion. That's pretty much it. If there are any comments, any feedback, I would love to hear that. Otherwise, thank you for your time, and thank you for listening to me. Over to Zach and Ankita, please. And there is something in chat.
So thanks everyone for coming to this workshop, and also thank our speaker today, Mr. Sidharth Joshi, for joining us. And if you have any question for our speaker, and feel free to open your mic, or if you're too shy, you can type in the chat box. Okay, if not, I think that's the end of today's workshop. Thanks everyone for coming. Thank you.
Thank you.